Hey guys, I'm Cal from Kelly T Black Metal Reviews. I've just had the pleasure of speaking with a metal legend, a death metal icon. He is the founding member of Cannibal Corpse, Mr. Alex Webster. We discussed all things Violence Unimagined, the 15th studio released album by Cannibal Corpse only this year, April 16th, 2021 through Metal Blade Records. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview. This was certainly a highlight for me. If you do enjoy this content and other content on Kelly T Black Metal Reviews, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, tap those notifications, and follow us over on Facebook and Instagram too. I hope you enjoy. Alex, thank you so much for joining me. This is an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. How are you, first of all?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Look, I know you're very busy. You've had a very tight interview schedule, so we'll rip right into this. First of all, congratulations on the release of Violence Unimagined. I have to ask though, first of all, what is in the water that Cannibal Corpse drink? Because you guys have been around since the late 80s. You've just dropped this exceptional monster. It's your 15th studio album. There's bands that just tend to lose their fire over that much time, and they produce music that's almost unrecognizable to fans. And here you guys are keeping it exceptionally heavy, completely controversial and extreme. What is your secret? How do you maintain to age in the industry like a fine wine and still keep this very recognizably Cannibal Corpse?
You know, I think we've always known what the band is supposed to be. You know, we started out as a death metal band that sings about horror topics, and that's what we've always been, and that's what we're always going to be. You know, so we had those boundaries kind of in our mind musically, and I think you know, having that in mind and then trying to be as creative as possible within the boundaries. That's really what it's about. You know, there's I mean, yes, there's certain things you're not going to want to do, you know, like we wouldn't add violins or something weird like that to our music, but we definitely want to experiment within those boundaries. And I think it's very helpful when you have a number of different songwriters in the band, and we've always had that. We have that now as well. And everybody's always contributed, and it's always been more than just one or two creative minds. It's really the whole band working together, and lots of different songwriters, really. I think that helps. We all are on the same page with what the band is supposed to be, like I mentioned, but there's just that much more likelihood that things are going to be interesting when it's more than one person doing the writing. You know, we're using our creativity as a team in a way, and I think that's important. And another thing too is we are usually writing these albums after having toured for a couple of years, so it's not something that we get to do all that often. Really take 6 months to write an album, which is usually about how long we take. So by the time we're ready to write, we usually have just finished touring for 2.5 to 3 years. And so we're really excited again to write. It's not like we're writing day in and day out for years at a time. It's really something really creative and fun that we get to do, but we only get to do it every 2 or 3 years, really, because the rest of the time we're kind of out on the road and playing music that we've already written, which we love to tour, but it is, by the time we're done with the tour, we're really ready to get back there and compose music again. So I think we're fired up about it because we get to take breaks between albums, during which time we're touring, you know? So yeah, those are the two things, you know, really the teamwork of multiple songwriters, and then also just, we look forward to songwriting. Just such a fun part of it. It's such a fun part of being in a band is the creative part. So we always look forward to it.
Definitely. It's definitely noticeable. You've had a recent lineup change with Eric Rutten, the guitarist, and he's also a producer, I believe, joining the band's lineup. Notably, when I listen to Violence Unimagined, there is a change in the guitar style. I feel like the guitar solos in particular have so much more clarity. There's real chugging riffs, drawn out intense and dense, heavy toned riffs, as opposed to maybe previous albums where the guitar work still amazing, but maybe a bit more distorted. Mm-hmm. Also, the style of the music, it's very much Cannibal Corpse. It's solid death metal, but there are some tracks that are quite thrashy, such as Necrogenic Resurrection, and then Inhuman Harvest and Slowly Sawn offers such a tight as hell groove and rhythm. How has Eric's coming into the band changed the band dynamic and the overall writing process and sound?
I'll start with sound, and that guitar sound that you're talking about at the beginning and how it's a bit less distorted. That's something that Eric and Rob were really on the same page about. They wanted to, still come up with a super heavy guitar sound, but something where you could also hear all of the picking. Like a song like Necrogenic Resurrection, with all that speed picking, it would be harder to tell just how fast the guitar's playing if there was too much gain. You know what I mean? If there's just too much fuzz and distortion, you can't hear all the picking as well. So they found a really good sweet spot with the guitar sound. Rob and Eric worked really well together as a team developing that guitar sound. And I think it shows. It's a big difference. And Eric wound up being more on the same page with Rob in that area, and I think it paid off. Now, as a band member too, he's just just a great person to work with. I mean, we've been friends with him for a long, long time, and we've worked with him. He's been our producer for 4 of the 5 previous albums, and now with this album, he's produced 5 of our albums. So he understood our music really well, and we already had this great working relationship with him. Of course, he toured with us as our guitar player in 2019. So, by the time he joined, he really had a deep, understanding of what our music is. Like he completely understands it in a way that it would be hard for anybody else, I think, to know our music quite as well as he does. So that's a particularly good thing too, because he has his own style that he's developed over the past 30 some years. He's been playing death metal as long as we have. And during that time with Ripping Corpse, Morbid Angel, Hate Eternal, he's really developed a really strong musical identity of his own. So it was important that he knew our music so well so that he could mesh his style with our style without it seeming out of place, and it worked so perfectly. I think like these songs that he wrote Condemnation, Contagion, Ritual Annihilation, and Overtorture. He wrote those 3, and those, I think you can hear they're Cannibal Corpse songs 100%, but they are Cannibal Corpse songs written by Eric Rutan. You can hear that as well, if that makes any sense. Like he's managed, and that's what we want. And it goes back to the answer I had for the last question too, talking about the teamwork and the songwriting and as a band in general. Every time there's a member change, one person leaving and another person joining, there's going to be a slight difference in our sound because we invite that person to participate.
Yes.
Like Eric's not a hired gun just playing our riffs. He's a member of the band writing our riffs, along with the rest of us. And that's how it was for the other guys, the past members of the band. They all contributed a lot too. And there was little changes in the sound when people come and people go. So when Eric joined, we were like, well, we want his musical identity to be part of our band now and moving forward. And like I said, it's great though, because he knew how to do that the right way, how to integrate it. Like the songs he wrote don't sound like Hate Eternal songs, in my opinion. They're Cannibal Corpse songs. He's going to keep Hate Eternal going, but there's a clear difference between the two. The songs he writes for us wouldn't be the songs that he'd write for Hate Eternal and vice versa. And he understands the difference well.
Yeah, no, it's definitely good synergy, and you can hear that throughout the entire album. Let's talk about lyrics, because let's face it, Cannibal Corpse in particular and death metal as a genre is renowned for, pretty intense lyrical content. And whether, regardless of what dialect it's in, because some of it isn't in English, and even if it is English, it's usually pretty low guttural and lots of syllables pushed together, and it's hard to make out. But I did pick up on some of the lyrics around, obviously, violence, and you guys are very horror themed. There was a lot of chaos in there, and the pandemic. What is this album about? Is each track telling its own story, or does each track kind of tie the whole album together? What is Violence Unimagined about?
They are 11 individual songs, so
Right.
it's not a concept album by any means. We've never really done anything quite like that, but yeah. So there are 11 individual songs, and each of them, I think musically we like to have a lot of variety, and again that comes from different writers, and for the lyrics we had 4 different writers on this album. Me, Paul, Eric, and Rob all contributed lyrics for the various songs. And again, that mixture, there's a variety. Like Condemnation Contagion, Eric's song, was, I believe, inspired. He wrote those lyrics right around the time when coronavirus hysteria, was really happening in the US. People didn't know what was coming next. And so it was something that he was able to take some inspiration from. I mean, the song itself is not meant to be particularly about COVID or some specific thing, but like that specific existing disease, I think it is meant to be a fictional one, but certainly inspired by what was going on. And then he wrote for Ritual Annihilation, I believe that's like a Norse sacrifice kind of song, which is something we've never done before. We don't have any lyrics about that particular thing. Rob wrote a song, that Inhumane Harvest, that's about the illegal organ trade.
Right.
Necrogenic Resurrection is about a cult that's trying to resurrect a notorious murderer through human sacrifice. So they're all different. It's the thread that ties everything together with this band is that it's got to be horrifying or violent in some way, but it doesn't all have to be sort of the same kind of horror. We can have some songs that may be a little more psychological, some of them that are a bit more based in reality, others that are more supernatural. I mean, when you're going to do 15 albums, and that ends up being like we probably have 150, 160 original songs that we've written over the years. And they're not all going to be about, undead zombies eating flesh. We probably do have a couple dozen of those and a couple dozen of serial killer songs too, for that matter. But there's a lot of other subjects we cover too, as long as they all fit under that broad category of horror. We're open to suggestion, and like having 4 different writers really helps with that. Yeah,
definitely. Given the controversy that does often follow Cannibal Corpse due to the lyrical content and even your imagery, pretty much through basic lack of understanding what extreme music and death metal is about. I mean, I remember when Vile was meant to release here in Australia, it was banned, and it probably made us want it even more because it was like, why is this banned? This must be so bad, meaning so good. But you've managed to also remain one of the most commercially successful extreme bands in history, really. What's been the method to your madness to maintain still very shocking and extreme content, but commercially accepted to a point?
Wow, yeah, I have to think about that because there's, we do have some really extreme lyrics. I mean, for sure, there are other bands out there in the death metal scene and the gore grind scene that are even more extreme than us, for sure. There's a bunch, but for a band that's really as high profile as we are, we have some of the most graphically violent lyrics. And yeah, it's I'm not sure exactly. I mean, we do have to deal with some censorship problems. We had to deal with some in Australia back maybe 15 years or so ago. We were experiencing a little pushback against us coming down to play, I think in maybe 2007 or something like that. I can't remember what year it was when we came down, and there was some censorship stuff. And then we've had problems in South Korea in the past with things getting censored, Germany, Russia, Guatemala, we had a show canceled. So I mean, it's one of those things where, you can write stuff like this, but the bigger you get, the more of a target you probably become.
Yes.
You know, where there's bands more extreme than us that aren't getting censored, but if they started maybe becoming a little more well known, they would also face similar things, I think. So I can't say what exactly how we've managed to do it, other than that I think we have gone out of our way to explain our approach, and our approach is that we are making horror fiction the same way a horror movie is, and a horror novel or a horror graphic novel, you know, like a comic or whatever, or for that matter, scary video games or video games with a lot of violence. It's done as fictional entertainment, and we've tried to make that clear over the years in interviews we've done, that we don't condone violence or anything like that. And hopefully the censors kind of pick up on that, like, oh, okay, they understand, their fans understand it. You know, it's like a movie like Saw or Hostel or something, but it's a musical version of something like that. So hopefully they understand. But we still have problems though. Sometimes shows get canceled. It happens once in a great while. A show will get canceled, and there's certain songs we're not supposed to play in Germany, certain albums we're not supposed to sell. So it's kind of just part of it for us at this point.
Yeah,
you know.
It's frustrating when you mention that about the movies and the novels and the games. Like, they seem to just fly under the radar and get away with it. And I mean, good for them, but I don't understand why a band essentially doing the same thing just in another media has to explain themselves as much as you guys do.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we kind of explain it in just about any interview. When we talk about censorship, we kind of go through this. We're like, okay, you know, Stephen King doesn't want you to run around a hotel with an axe killing people.
No.
Like what happened in the movie The Shining or his novel The Shining. And likewise, we don't want anything that's going on in our songs to ever happen either, or anyone to do them. They're fictional horror stories, you know, and we, you know, don't look up to these extreme, despicable characters that we have in a lot of our songs. You know, they're just they're fictional characters in songs. And same thing like a fictional murderer in a movie or whatever. And we've tried to make that clear. But I think with music, it's a medium where a lot of people are used to music being love songs and things that they relate to. And they see this person singing this love song or singing a song about some other emotional thing about their family or whatever. And they're like, oh, well, that's what music is for. Music is for singing about things that you relate to. And that person singing the song is saying, this is who I am. And we're not doing that at all. It's a completely different approach. We're telling horror stories, and we're not, you know, it's completely different. So I can see where someone who doesn't understand our genre could be confused. And I think that's what's happened. And like I said, now that we've been around for decades and the whole genre's been around for decades, hopefully hopefully there's just enough information out there about what kind of people death metalers actually are, and the death metal bands and fans, and how it's all not what they think it is at first glance.
Definitely.
So
let's talk about,
but I'll still keep talking about it in every interview, just in case there's somebody who's just learning about us for the first time, and they'll be like, oh, okay, now I'm not so worried. I understand where he's coming from.
Normal people. Speaking about the pandemic, considering you guys, I believe you started writing this in 2019. I imagine COVID, the isolations, the restrictions, it would have made it so hard on you guys logistically to record and also possibly writing together. I assume this is probably the first time you've ever had to do isolation recording. How did this work for you guys? Was there any challenges you had to overcome to meet your recording and release targets?
Well, the release target got moved because normally we do a tour to coincide with a release. And we had originally planned on putting this out in November of 2020. And when it became clear right away that wasn't going to be necessary, there would be no tour in November 2020. So why rush? You know, so we decided on April, and that gave us a bit more time in the studio and everything, and time to do whatever we needed to do to make things perfect, but it wasn't, we still kind of knew even April would be too early for touring, but we didn't want to sit on this album until who knows when, next year. We don't know when we're touring again. So we did want to get it out, but there was no need to rush to put it out in November because we knew there'd be no shows. You know, that was clear. So that side of things, it created a little bit of breathing room on the schedule. But as far as recording goes, I live on the other side of the country these days. I'm over in the state of Oregon. The rest of the guys are in Florida. And under normal circumstances, you know, I just fly down there and work with the guys before stuff. And I'm very good at doing homework, you know, so we exchange ideas through email, and I'll practice their songs. They practice mine. And I'm good with that kind of stuff. But this time I ended up having to stay up here because of lockdowns and just, you know, safety concerns and everything. And I've recorded at home before with side projects, so I knew how to do it. And recording bass at home is probably the easiest out of the three instruments that you're dealing with in death metal. Drums are super hard to make a decent recording at home. You have to have a ton of gear and a great room and whatever. Guitar can be hard too, but bass, you can record direct and then reamp it, and it sounds quite good. And that's what we did. I recorded my bass at my home studio, sent the tracks down to Eric, and he reamped them, which is it's, I don't know if a lot of listeners probably already, or people watching this probably already know what it is, but you can play a direct signal that's been previously recorded through an amp. And it's as though I'm standing there playing. And so that's what he did. He used his favorite Ampeg down there with a pedal by a company called Dark Glass that I really love their pedals, and came up with the same sound that it would have been if I had been down there in Tampa with the other guys, or in St. Petersburg, I should say. The other guys, I think they all recorded down there, but they were recording separately. That is, the drums record first. That's what we normally do anyhow. You know, you record the drums first, then 2 tracks of rhythm guitar, then bass, then vocals and guitar solos usually happen at around the same time. So I think they did it that way. And I don't think that they were carpooling or anything. It just probably wasn't safe at the time to be in that enclosed space. But I think it was probably just Eric and then whichever other musician was working with him. Right. You know, so it'd just be 2 guys in the studio at any given time. I believe that's how they did it, but I actually was not there. So I'm not exactly sure how they did it.
Bit of a different experience for you guys.
It was.
Yeah. Sure. Now, you guys signed with Metal Blade Records in 1989. Obviously, the relationship between label and band is very important. However, you guys have stayed with this label for 30 odd years, possibly 33.
The whole time. Yeah, we got signed in 1989.
Wow. I mean, it's so impressive. But what's the secret to the success of the long-term business relationship between Cannibal Corpse and Metal Blade Records?
Well, they've always just been very down to earth, and we've been like the CEO, Brian Slagle. We got to meet him the first time we did a U.S. tour. The first U.S. tour we did was for Butchered at Birth, and we met Brian out in L.A. at the Metal Blade offices, and he hung out. And I mean, I don't know if that's always possible. Of course, I have no experience with any other label, but I don't know if you get to meet the CEO when you're one of their beginner bands. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's normal or not, but with Metal Blade it is. And the whole staff are metalheads, you know, so they just, it's just been a perfect fit the whole time. It's like a very family kind of feeling, you know. They are, they've always had great staff there, and everybody there, we've always gotten along great with them. So there's never been a reason to change. Yeah. You know, it's really been a perfect fit all along, and we've never seriously considered leaving.
Yeah, that's
I mean, every time their contract is up to be renewed or whatever and renegotiated, we're just like, are we really going to look around at other labels? No, let's just figure out, the next deal with Metal Blade.
Yeah.
I mean, we just have such a good relationship. I can't imagine being on another label.
That's exceptional, because it is very rare. Speaking of Butchered at Birth, it's reaching its 30th year anniversary this year, I believe. Does the label have any plans to do anything special for this anniversary? Because this is a pretty significant album. It's the first one you ever toured. It's just one that's held its time so well. Are you able to talk to me about that, if there's plans for celebrating.
Yeah, yeah, I believe that they're making some deluxe edition, something like that, and I'm not sure exactly what's going into it or how much I should talk about that. I don't know if they want to keep certain details as a surprise for a press release, but yeah, they are going to do some kind of cool, like, anniversary release of Butchered at Birth. And it's a very big album for us. I mean, we're proud of all 15 albums, but Butchered really, I mean, Eaton started this out, and I'm very proud of that album, Eaton Back to Life, but Butchered at Birth we started touring. We started having all sorts of censorship controversy. I mean, we really kind of got sort of on the map, as they say, with that album. Yeah. So it's a good one to celebrate. And the artwork too, just that the artwork for that album alone is, I mean, if I had to pick one, I love everything Vincent Locke has done for us, but if I had to pick the most iconic, of all of the album covers, probably that one. Probably Butchered at Birth. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Alex, let's just digress for a little bit, because I know that you're involved in some side projects, predominantly instrumental extreme metal. Do you want to talk to me about that? I'd love to learn a little bit more about these side projects.
Sure. Both side projects are sort of on hold right now. I have, I'm open to working on either of them again. The one, Conquering Dystopia, that was something that Jeff Loomis and Keith Merrow, guitar players Jeff Loomis and Keith Merrow, put together, and they got me and drummer Alex Rudinger involved with it. And we actually got to do a tour with that band in addition to doing an album. We got to open for Animals as leaders back in 2014. And that was a lot of fun, because that's the only other tour I've done with a different band. That's the only tour I've done with a different band. So that was a fun experience. I obviously, love being in Cannibal Corpse. It's the best, but at the same time, it was fun to do something different, something where it was strictly 100% just that band's just all about music. Of course, there's no singing. Yeah. So there's no focus on censorship or any sort of controversy. It was really all just about what we were saying with our instruments. And of course, Cannibal's that way as well. We certainly, there's a heavy, we're very much a musically emphasized band too. We emphasize that a lot, but it was cool. It was something different. They're a great bunch of guys, and I had a lot of fun doing that. So we don't have any plans to do anything in the future. Conquering doesn't, but at the same time, the door is open. We all, I think, would be open to doing something again, but currently there are no plans to do anything else. Blotted Science, it's sort of a similar situation. We never got to do any shows with that band, but Ron and I are still in touch, and he's busy with other stuff, and obviously I'm busy with Cannibal, but I've got the door open to that too. That stuff is extremely complex. Conquering stuff, that was a lot of work as well, but it's Blotted Science is even more complex, and it takes a lot of work. When we did the first album, that was basically my hobby. Like, what was I doing in my spare time in 2005 and 2006 or whatever? I was working on the Machinations of Dementia album. That was what I would do with my spare time, a good portion of the time and during those years. I was just working on that album. It was really challenging. I'm not sure if we have that kind of time available now to do it justice, to make a full-length follow-up to Machinations of Dementia. We did an EP, and that also was plenty of work. But to do a full album like that again, the door is open. I'd love to do it. It's really, both of these bands, it was such a pleasure to work with all the guys involved. I'm a real, I can be like a bit of a music nerd or whatever. Anybody who knows me, don't get me started talking about music theory stuff or whatever. I'll bore you to death, but it's something that I'm really interested in, and playing in bands like that, it was a dream come true, and I think that's what side projects should be, especially if you're in a band that has a really established sound like Cannibal Corpse. Both Conquering Dystopia and Blotted Science are both really heavy, but there's a bunch of stuff in there that wouldn't work in Cannibal Corpse, obviously. You know, they're different. They're different. And so I think if you really have an itch to do something that's different from your main band, for me personally, rather than putting it into the main band, make a side band to express yourself that way. I think sometimes when I see a backlash against a band that tried something a little too outside of their style, it makes me wonder if maybe they wouldn't have just been better off doing a side project. And then probably no one would have complained.
That's right.
About the side. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to name names, but there's a few, I'm sure everybody's got in their mind a favorite band of theirs that made a misstep, and it might have not been a misstep if it had just been under a different name.
Yeah. That's
something that did, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how I feel about side projects, and I'm open to doing more. You know, I love music. I think most musicians love more than just one kind, you know, so I'm always open to try and do different stuff. And I love instrumental music. I love letting the instruments do all of the work, you know. Ron's lead guitar playing, Jeff's lead guitar playing, those are the vocalists in those bands. You know, they take the place of a vocalist. So it's cool. I really like it, and I want to do more stuff like that in the future, be it with those bands or some other project.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, it is an excellent outlet to be able to express yourself differently. And I think it ties back to what we were talking about before, particularly with bands that have such a recognizable sound and have been in the game for so long, and then they just change their direction a bit too sharply. Yeah, it can upset the apple cart pretty quickly with long-term fans of the genres, that's for sure.
Yeah. There's, you know, that's what it is. It's like, it goes back to the first question. I said, we know what Cannibal Corpse is, you know, and we love working within the boundaries we've drawn for ourselves. If we want to do something that's clearly beyond those boundaries, there's lots of musicians that we're buddies with that might have a similar interest that we can team up with for projects and things. And that's what we'll do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think you guys are doing it so right. This must be strange for you after all these years of touring albums right away. And obviously we just spoke about that before, that it's just so hard to know when that's even going to happen for you. Could be 22, could be 23. You know, it's such a hard time to pick. But how important is playing live for you guys now, even to this day, given you've been doing it for so long, you're all settled down with families now, things change in life. Is it still just as important now as it was, say, in the 90s for you guys to tour this album and get up and do this live?
Well, I mean, first of all, to be completely upfront, it's very important business-wise. I mean, any band our level, I think a very large portion of how they make their living comes from revenue from live shows and the merchandise sold there. So on that side of things, it's still very important. But I mean, it's also just incredibly fun. You know, it's like, it's the best. I mean, it's our job, but it's the best job ever. You know, I love being out there, and there's so much camaraderie amongst our band and crew. And then with the bands we tour with most of the time, it's always just like a big, you know, traveling circus. It's just a whole lot of fun out there, really. We love doing it, going from city to city, playing for our fans, and, you know, just having a great time. It's something we all miss it. You know, I think it's certainly not just us. It's thousands of bands out there that are probably just chomping at the bit to get back out there, because it really is just so much fun. I can't imagine, you know, not liking to tour. It's a lot of fun. And it's also, like, it's how we promote our album too. In a normal situation, I'd probably be doing this interview from the road. We put an album out on Friday. Well, we would be on tour under any other circumstance. You know what I mean? We would be in the middle of a tour. That's what we've done pretty much since Butchered is, you know, an album comes out and very shortly thereafter we're touring, or most of the time we're touring as it comes out. So to have an album come out and have no shows set up, and we haven't played a show since December 2019, it is a little it's different, and we miss it, and we can't wait to get back out there. We're kind of eyeing up the beginning of 2022. I know some other bands are actually, you know, some of our friends in the States are going to try and do some tours just pretty much within our borders, I think, in the fall, late summer and early fall, you know, got fingers crossed that everything goes well for those guys, and everybody's, does okay out there. But we're waiting just a little bit longer, and yeah, it's tough. We like to plan a tour about 6 months in advance, and right now I don't think any of us can say what things are going to be like in 6 months.
No, it's still hard to tell at the moment, but it's great to know you're still just as keen as you were, and we'll all be hoping that eventually you can do international touring as well, because we'd love to have you here in Australia, that's for sure.
Well, what's great is when, you guys apparently, I've talked to a few other interviewers from Australia for this album, and everybody says you're able to do some live shows with local bands down there. So that's great. And it seems like you guys have handled the pandemic as well as any country out there, really, from what I've been heard. Yeah. So hopefully that means we'll be able to come down. We could probably, the cool thing is we can come down and play like 5 shows. It's tougher, I think, when it's just, you're going to a country for one show, but to come down and do a full tour of Australia and go back, hopefully that's something. Let's keep our fingers crossed, maybe before the end of 2022. It's been a while since we've been there. So we're due to come back down anyhow. And if both of our countries have the pandemic in a good controlled situation, then hopefully they open up that kind of thing as well within the coming months, or at least by next year sometime.
Yeah, we can only hope, that's for sure, because as you said, we do have local gigs going on, which is fantastic. We've got some amazing live and extreme bands here, but it would be good to get the international circuit happening again, that's for sure. So, yeah, we miss it. Alex, I've actually got a question from one of my friends, if you don't mind me asking on his behalf. His name's Dan. He's from the UK. He's an absolute diehard fan of yours. He knew that I'd be asking questions more so around Cannibal Corpse. So he wants to know for you personally what you think of the current death metal scene at the moment, and if there's any standouts to you that you can suggest.
There's one I've been suggesting, and it's a relatively new band, but it's actually formed by a veteran, my friend Gene Paulubicki from Angel Corpse, his current band, Perdition Temple. They've been around probably about 10 years now, I think. I don't know when he started that band up, the exact year, but they're awesome. And actually, we toured with them together with Thy Art Is Murder in December 2019. So the last shows we played were with Thy Art and Perdition Temple, actually in Tampa, in 2019. So that's a great band, and they're death metal. You know what I mean? Like it's great because it's pure death metal. There's nothing that isn't death metal about it, but they're not really like, they're also moving it forward somehow. I'm not explaining this very well. You'll just have to hear it, but there's innovation going on while staying firmly rooted in the old school.
Right.
That's the best description I can give. So check out Perdition Temple. Their newest album is Sacraments of Dissension, and it's great. If you love evil sounding high speed death metal, I can't see how you wouldn't like that one. It's just such a great album, and I think there's a lot of great death metal these days, and there has been. That's what's great about the death metal scene. We've got, from what I hear, there's a lot of younger bands coming out that are playing really old school sounding stuff, and then you've got a huge amount of really like mainstay kind of bands that have been going at it for the past 3 decades, just continuing to tour, like Immolation, Incantation, bands like that, Obituary, Deicide. Everybody's kind of stuck with it, and there's a bunch of Chrysian, all sorts of bands that have been keeping busy. Nile. So death metal's had this very strong scene. It never got huge, but it's just been strong. It's been strong and steady. It's not something that had some massive peak. A few little ups and downs, but really it's been, I'd say the story of death metal's underground is it's been steady and reliable. Yeah, Devourment. I'm thinking there's all these bands that, Dying Fetus, so many great bands that have been steadily making albums and playing shows and stuff for a long time. And then to see a new infusion of younger musicians, that it's great.
It
You
is.
know,
Yeah.
there's going to be a bright future, I think, for death metal. It's an established form of underground music that is here to stay. I think that's the cool thing. It's not, whenever something new comes out, people wonder, oh, how long is this going to last? And I don't know if anybody predicted death metal would be going for 35 some years or whatever, but here it is, and I really think it can be going for twice as long, or I don't see any reason for it to ever completely stop. I mean, look at punk rock and hardcore; those are similar, strong underground forms of music that are just always going to be around.
Yes.
And I think death metal's one of those kind of genres that's just always going to be around.
Yeah, I agree, which is good news for us that love it, that's for sure. Alex, I'll wrap this up very soon. I just want to ask you one more thing, though, because Violence Unimagined, it's out now. I haven't heard a bad thing about it. It's been all over the media, reviews and whatnot. But more importantly, I want to know what you guys think about this album now that it's out, people are listening to it. Do you, after being this long in the game, do you even care what media think about this now? And what do you guys personally feel about this album?
I mean, we're really proud of it, and we're proud of all of the albums, though. I think back to every album, and every one of them represents the best that we could do at that time. From the five guys, whichever five guys it was in the band at that time, that was the best we could do. Everybody worked so hard. So we're really proud of this one, and hopefully people like it. I mean, I think we feel like, hey, we're death metal musicians, but we're also death metal fans. So if we make an album that we would love to listen to, then we feel pretty comfortable that a good lot of our fans are also going to love it.
Yeah.
And not everybody is, though. I think that's impossible. Like if you're looking for 100% approval, like if you want to find someone who doesn't like your album, it doesn't take long to find it. No matter how proud you are of it, somebody out there, it's just not for them. That's fine. So yeah, I mean, we like good reviews, and bad reviews, we can accept that too, because it's music. It's a matter of opinion. You don't have to like it. But we're very proud of it, and we feel like it's the beginning of a new chapter, really, having Eric join and everything, where it's such a strong first entry to the chapter of our band, this lineup. The beginning of this lineup, we can't wait to really do more albums with this lineup. We're feeling very energized, and I hope everybody likes it, and there's a lot more to come.
That is great news. That is great news to hear. Let me tell you that. Alex, this has been an absolute pleasure, a complete highlight for me to talk to you, and I really do appreciate you giving me the time. It's meant the world to me, and I just wish you all the best, and I hope to see you on tour here in Australia eventually.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Likewise, it was a real pleasure for me, and appreciate the interview. And yeah, I hope to see everybody soon. Everybody in Cannibal Corpse, we can't wait to get back out and tour, and we can't wait to get back down to Australia to play for everybody. So stay safe and healthy, and hopefully we see you all again soon.
Thanks so much, Alex. Bye.
Thank you. All right, take care. Thanks so much.
That was amazing.
Anticipation of the Lord drawing near, fueled by hatred and spite. If this don't kill them, it will fill them with fear. Opposing forces, no retreat on the run. They got their asses handed to them hours ago. Now in pursuit of the survivors who fled, closing the gaps to many more will be dead. Attrition, breaking the enemy, detecting tracks, breaking the hunt. Where is their savior now? Where do they hide? Follow the blood. Nothing can save them.